Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Curacel Frontline webinar. I'm Melvin Malanga, and I'll be your moderator for today. We're really glad to have you here, and we really look forward to an exciting session today. So I'll just give out the ground rules first in terms of maybe how we're going to carry out this. So for housekeeping, the session is going to take 1 hour. We'll spend 45 minutes in the panel discussion, and then we'll provide around 10 minutes for your questions. So please drop also your questions on the chat. We'd really love to have interactive session where we can go through your questions and have our panel to be able to answer you on the same. So without further ado, maybe I'll just jump into the intros to be able to introduce our panel. So we have a panel of 4 people today joining us. I'll start with Njeri Jomo. So Njeri Jomo is the CEO, Jubilee Health Insurance, the largest insurer in East Africa. And it's serving over 1.9 million people across Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Burundi, and Mauritius. With over 2 decades of experience spanning over health insurance and life insurance, investment-linked products and asset management. She's led Jubilee's health mission in reimagining health access in Africa, from AI-powered claims to digital wellness ecosystem to flexible health and financing models. Currently, she also serves the board of Jubilee Health Insurance in Uganda and Tanzania, and the Associates of Kenya Insurers, and she's the vice president and co-founder of Kenya Women Insurance Association. Welcome to the panel, Njeri. We really appreciate you for making time for this. Our second panelist is Dr. Benjamin Otieno. Dr. Benjamin Otieno is the General Manager of Risk and Compliance at GA Insurance. He specializes in risk management, governance, strategy, and sustainability. He's in charge of designing breaks that let organizations go faster. With over 2 decades in Kenya insurance and financial service sector, he's a senior risk and compliance. He has held senior risk and compliance roles in APA Insurance, CIC Insurance Group. Dr. Otieno holds a PhD in information technology from Kibabii University and is a certified data private solution engineer, bringing a specialized perspective to the intersection of data privacy, AI, and fraud detection in insurance. Thank you for gracing us, Dr. Otieno. It's really a pleasure to have you here. We appreciate you for making time. Thirdly, we have Dennis Tombale. He's the head of operations for health business at Jubilee Insurance Uganda. He oversees the day-to-day realities of health claims, processing, and then provider management and operational delivery across one of the region's largest health insurer by books. Before Jubilee, he also had roles at UAP Old Mutual Uganda, building experience across health insurers operations in multiple East African markets. Dennis is also the founder and CEO of Esperon Technologies and the director of Esperon Medical Supplies, bringing entrepreneurial and technology-oriented lens to insurance operations. He's an alumnus of the Stanford Graduate School of Business, and he sits on the Rising Hope Foundation's board. Thank you, Dennis, for gracing us. We really appreciate you for making time for this. We look forward to an interactive session. The last person on our panel, or rather the 4th person in the panel, is our very own Abdul Jabbar Momo, our VP of Commercials, where he leads the market expansion, partnership, and revenue across Africa and beyond. As his own commercial strategist, he helps insurers deploy AI-powered claims, automation, and fraud, wastage and abuse, prevention at scale. Abdul Jabbar has worked with carriers and ecosystem across multiple markets, translate innovation into measurable outcomes, faster settlement, lower leakages, and better customer experience. He's an active voice on the future of insurance in emerging markets and a mentor to the rising operators. Abdul Jabbar, thank you for gracing us with your presence, and we really love it that you're also here. So without further ado, I would like to jump into the general questions. So we have 4 general questions for the panel, and any one of you can be able to pick one of the questions and be able to answer for us. the first question I'd like to answer is one is how has fraud and abuse patterns changed in organizations over the years? Basically, what I'm asking is what has made them harder to detect over time? Anybody can go. Let me know if you've heard my question, or should I repeat it?
I think we've had it, and perhaps I could go as I give my fellow panelists an opportunity as well. I think if you go back, and perhaps for this region, if you go back to what health insurance lends itself to, is the fact that moral hazard is quite high. I think the other classes of insurance where you have moral hazard probably a lot more prevalent. You have the typical tension where the provider and the insurer are operating on two ends of the spectrum. Post-COVID, we have seen providers really move to grow revenue, and that they're using through driving incidence rates and average cost, which if you look at it as an insurer, of course, that works cross-purpose because we are working to reduce the same things. So, and also when you look at the patient, one of the things we talk about, one of the most abused relationships is often always a provider-patient relationship, because whatever your doctor tells you is almost gospel truth. And therefore, regardless, I mean, it sort of gives you an imbalance there. You're going to take whatever the doctor says. And the question is, how do we validate that? And especially because for us at Jubilee, one of the bigger conversations has been value-based care and really driving the conversation on outcomes. So for me, I think the one bigger change has been fraud moving from being episodic really to being a bit more systemic. We've come from a situation where it would be impersonation here and there to a lot more. The fact that right now it is harder, definitely it's a bit more systemic and again, I've spoken to the incentives of why we see this happening. Of course, it's a lot harder to detect. It's no longer what you'd pick up. It's straightforward. Collusion is often one of the harder things to pick up. So again, that makes it a bit more harder. Previously, we did deploy solutions like SDP, which will define certain rules, but providers are intelligent and human beings are intelligent as well. They would learn the rules and know how to be able to tweak to make sure then again, then it's able to come through. So for me, those would be the two major areas. It's more systemic now. In Kenya, we speak about the fact that we could easily be looking at over 30% of the claims we receive easily being fraud and fraud related. And that tells you just how much that continues to grow. And also the fact that the system is getting more advanced and it's getting harder and harder to detect. Providers know how you prefer your documents received. They realize you like it done this way and that way, and the pass rate is higher. And therefore, it makes a strong use case for more intelligent solutions.
Thank you for that, Njeri. Stating that it's systemic is one thing, but giving us the numbers, the percentages, 30, you're saying more than 30%. So there is really something serious in terms of what is happening. So it's something that needs to be addressed. So I'll just go to the next question. Where are the biggest bottlenecks in the health claims? Basically, where has AI made the most tangible difference? So the bottlenecks that are currently being experienced, and also with the coming of AI, emerging of AI, and AI being at the forefront, how has it come in terms of making the tangible differences in terms of what was happening and currently what is happening? Anybody can go also.
Thanks, Marvin. Maybe I can take this one. I hope I'm audible enough. Maybe just to pick up exactly when Njeri left off, there's definitely been transition over the years in how claims are coming through. If you go back 10 years back, 15 years back, we used to receive claims in a very manual format, which meant we need to have a couple of teams sit down and process those claims. Right now, with technology advancing, definitely has been a major stepping stone, where now you have claims coming in real time and in a more digital manner. And of course, AI definitely leverages on having data. It doesn't work on paper as much as there's OCR. So the establishment of EDI in most of our setups in how we receive claims, it has made it much easier compared to 5 years ago. Now AI comes in at the most critical time now where we have more claim volumes have gone up. If you just look at just Uganda alone, we averagely, for say, I'll speak for Jubilee, Uganda, where we're receiving about 60,000 claims. But that's just one claim. Each claim gets broken down into, say, 4 to 5 lines because based on the service or the benefit. So if you're manually doing it, meaning your turnaround time on how claims are coming through is quite low, but right now AI makes it much easier. So we have definitely seen the shift in how quickly one we're detecting the fraud. The 30% we're speaking about the fraud of abuse, but then definitely it's giving us now more granular approach in the conversations that we're having with our service providers and our customers. So it only doesn't affect the providers, but it's giving us our insights in how we are underwriting. So there's the very good linkage now with how we look at the experience with our customers in our rating, in how we're looking at the claims, but largely the ecosystem is helping us move in the right direction. We're definitely not yet there, but there's been a major shift in how the claims are coming through and how we are adjudicating them to have better results and be able to educate our members, our customers, and then the relationship between the providers and insurance companies. So there's been that shift, and AI is doing a tremendous job in helping us be more efficient. Thank you, Melvin.
Okay. Thank you for that, Dennis. So AI has really helped you in terms of just giving you more insights and also speeding up in terms of how the adjudication is done. So that is interesting. Jeba, I see your hand up. You want to add something to that?
Just to add a bit to what Dennis was saying, I think even from a technology and solution perspective, where we've seen the biggest impact has really been around the adjudication process, just crunching that time into a matter of minutes. And then, of course, the cost savings, right? I mean, we are even conservative when we talk about the numbers to say about 20%. But I mean, even going all the way to 30% means, that's a huge bottom line opportunity there for insurers. And, just technology infusion has really encouraged a lot more health insurers to move from, being post-payment investigative, working towards recovery to being even like more real-time, being able to do these investigations at the point of pre-authorization, at the point of, even the claims adjudication much faster, much efficiently. And, that comes from a system design perspective, right? Beyond even the intent to commit fraud, there are usually a lot of fragmentations we see across the system. And just redesigning that architecture to layer data and then, layer intelligence on top of that has really, just boosted operational efficiency and giving a lot more insurers in East Africa the opportunity to serve, the end customers at a much more, effective cost rate. Yeah, really good insights, Dennis. Thank you for sharing as well. Over to you, Melvin.
Okay. Thank you for that, Japa. So on to my third question, which is actually my favorite question. I'm a little bit biased here. So if you could change one thing about how health claims are handled in East Africa, what could it be?
Maybe I can comment on that, Melvin.
Yes, Doctor.
If I can use one word, I would say empathy. Essentially, at the point of processing claim, that's when we have the customer at the most vulnerable point. And that's the point when the customer wants to feel the insurer the most. Of course, there is a lot to balance between what is to be payable and what's not to be payable. And of course, at that point, as much as we want to be very empathetic, we are also susceptible to fraud. And so if there is anything that we can change in how claims are handled, using technology to reduce the exposure to fraud, and in so doing, be as empathetic to the vulnerable client would be an area that I would be very keen on.
So empathy, being able to be empathetic to the end user or the client. So I'm saying, Njeri, do you feel like you need to also add something?
Yeah, I mean, of course, as Benjamin is saying, healthcare is emotive. I'm sure there's no way to get around that. But again, going back to the big conversation continues to be, and I tend to think we have fear of this model. We went on a fee-for-service approach, and therefore that incentivizes certain behavior that in some instances is not quite as supportive to the client. I think for me, if there's one thing I would change about how we handle claims, it will be how we leverage on that data to ensure that we're supporting better outcomes. And I'll tell you, one of the things that's most critical is perhaps if you look at the data, one of the things that I appreciate is today, leveraging on AI, I can have a conversation with the provider on outcomes. I can challenge the treatment protocol that was used. I can challenge the quantities. And I think we haven't in the past had an opportunity to really discuss that, because I think when we remove the financial aspects, it's really about a human being. Are they getting better? Are they genuinely getting better? And we've seen this perhaps in the past in this market. We saw a situation where a lot of providers were prescribing cough syrups for children under 5. And we took a position and said that that is not clinically correct, and have been able to do that.
Yeah, but basically she was just adding to what Dr. Otieno had said in terms of empathy, and how she is looking at the angle of how we can also be able to leverage data on the same. More specifically, she pointed out something that was very interesting regarding cough syrups being prescribed to young children under 5 for some time. Used to be a trend some time back. Think it's good that the insurance also came in and also protected the customers in terms of just protecting them from such things. So really appreciate it, that insight on that. So the last question I have for general questions before I go into the direct questions, just before I jump into it, for audience, please, you can also participate in this by giving us your questions on the chat, so that we can also ask the panel later on in the day, in the session, sorry. So our last question is, what's the biggest barrier in adapting AI in health claims? So is it cost? Is it trust? Is it regulation? Or is it something else? Really love to know how adaptation is being blocked for AI in health claims. So anybody can go.
We've seen the likes of smart applications playing really strong in that front in the East African market. And then you're having different insurance companies have different legacy systems. So one, from an insurance perspective, the cost of changing your legacy systems to be able to adapt to the new technology makes it quite difficult. So you have to really layer AI at different touch points of the claims. But at the same time, it's not really starting even at a point of source at provider level. So you find that the adoption to it is very gradual. And then also the understanding of how these particular things come into play. Maybe just to piggyback on what Njeri was speaking earlier, providers will have a different lens in how they look at the client who's receiving care, right? Which is a different perspective from what the insurer looks at. So when AI then comes in, it becomes a bit more of like the judge to give us a discussion point. So if it's not working in favor of the provider, there's definitely going to be pushback, right? Because then they're looking at the revenue they're losing out. Well, at an insurance perspective, we're trying to protect the integrity of the pool that we're putting together to be able to provide that care in the event someone gets an accident, opposed to seeing the unnecessary abuse. When you look in from a claims perspective, and I think this cuts across East Africa, you find that upper respiratory tract infections could probably take about, say, over 15% or 10% of the claims that you see on a month-on-month. Yet when you go on a granular level and you look at what is the actual cost to have that particular ailment treated, it's very, very minimal. So what does that do when you have AI, querying the claims? It's definitely going to affect the revenue of the provider. And if it has affected the revenue of the provider, how the provider interacts with the customer, the pushback is or your insurance company is limiting us on how we can treat you, which is probably not, the ACEs. So we are the borderline where we're trying to correct the system, protect the system, and AI is really doing a big job over that. So the fact that we have different standpoints, there will definitely be a huge setback. So technology layering, people, the civic education of understanding how AI works, or even the systems that we use, makes the adoption quite difficult, because at the end of the day, it has a major financial implication. When you're reducing providers' revenue by 15%, that's a major blow in their revenue. Yet we just need to correct that and get it into the system. So there is that aspect of how we view the outcomes from AI that makes it a bit difficult. Back to you, Marvin.
Thank you for that, Dennis. Anybody else who wants to chime in? The reason why the biggest bottlenecks for health, for adoption of AI?
Yes, Melvin.
Yes.
Just to add on to that, from where I sit, trust is also a big issue. AI is a black box, and in that black box, we are passing on to it a lot of data, and then it's churning out decisions. Now, whether those decisions are biased or not, that's a concern, and it's a very valid concern. AI has the capability of learning good manners as well as bad manners. And so if we pass into the AI tool 50 fraudulent claims, then all the decisions that will come out thereafter might be biased. Other than that, of course, auditability of the AI, of course, we want a tool that we can check, we can ask, we can query, what is it doing? Some of the AI tools, or maybe if I may put it differently, our conventional auditors may not be in that space yet to audit those AI tools. And then, of course, as Njeri said, we are dealing with doctors, and doctors are professionals. Then now you are telling them, this is what my AI is telling me. A doctor will push back. No, I'm the professional. You're not the professional. So there are a few challenges, and my biggest area that I think is a challenge that must be addressed is trust.
Yeah. I think you've hit a nerve with me on that one, because trust is very important. Jabbar, you can go also. I'm seeing you raise your hand.
Yeah, I think, from a solutions perspective, I think where we've also seen a bit of gap is, in when some insurers would come to us, Curacel usually, and say, we want to layer intelligence for faster adjudication, claims processing. And then, when you dig deeper in the discovery, you begin to also see that there are broken points, right? Again, there's something called AI readiness, right? So how is your data currently structured? What is the intake workflow looking like? The quality of data coming in, right? In the formats they're coming in, and then even the workflows for your provider relations and all of that, right? So sometimes we then have to track back to start solving what, you may describe as those fundamental issues around, the provider insurer engagement, how the data is structured, ensuring intake is done properly. Dennis also mentioned counterparts like, Smarts that have also been solving some of this problem in the East African market. So, and I think the beauty about this now is technologies are able to now interact with each other via APIs, right? So whether you're leveraging, one set of technology to, pretty much take care of your collection bits and your data bits, and you're leveraging a different technology for intelligence on how this is being adjusted. The most important thing is, if the data quality is clean, that also gives the opportunity for higher accuracy and trust, right? So I think it also begins in how we design our operational systems the quality of records we keep, and how that is fed into the intelligence system to then help us make better decision making, right? So I think that data perspective also comes to play from the system design. If we're able to do that or achieve that properly, we would also be able to, leverage or, hand a lot of trust to the kind of systems we're building to serve customers. I mean, health insurance is very important, right? We're talking about people's lives here. So that accuracy, needs to be near perfection, if not perfect. So very important point I wanted to also make as well. Over to you, Melvin.
Okay. Thank you for that, Jabbar. So now I'll jump into the direct questions. So I'll just be picking randomly one of our panelists and asking them a question. So for our audience, again, I've been checking with the chats. I don't see anybody who's posted any questions for our panelists. So please, we'd really appreciate if any of you who has any question can also type your questions on the chat so that we can be able to ask our panelists later on both of your questions. So I'll start with Njeri. Given that you're a strategic leader, I just wanted to ask you, what has been the hardest thing in justifying the building of business cases for investing in health claims automation? From your side, I know you've done this for a while, you have experience, so you might give us a bigger picture in terms of the hardest thing when it comes to justifying building a business case for investing in health claims automation.
For that question, I think if you go back to a couple of years back, because at least for Jubilee, we've been on this journey for a while. At the time when we began deploying AI to support claims decisioning, at that time, it perhaps was a common practice. The biggest challenge, of course, is often one, it begins at the fact that you have to demonstrate to your stakeholders that this, because if you go back to what it's doing, it's a claims adjudication is a core insurance function and a heavily regulated function. And therefore, demonstrating that you're going to leverage on technology to execute this function is critical internally, but it's also critical externally because you have a regulator who's keen to see that you're not just deploying technology and passing on that responsibility to a system. And therefore, then the question of who remains accountable. So the first issue for us was to demonstrate that we want to leverage on this technology. This is what we want to be able to do, and this is the impact. And of course, I believe at that stage for us, the bigger conversation wasn't just about faster claims payment. It was the fact that, of course, we thought we could do more and make sure that it achieves that. And of course, as you do that, it's always making sure that you're working with the right partner. The challenge is, of course, for this market, we deal with a lot of technology partners for different reasons. And the biggest challenge with justifying any technology project is that it actually is able to give you the benefits that you said that it would. And for us, we were quite fortunate to be able to make sure that what we anticipated it will do and the partners that we chose to work with will be able to help us achieve that. Of course, the other one had been alluded to previously. It was heavy change for providers. Providers typically don't trust insurers. They believe we're trying to stop or to reduce our claims for the sake of it, and therefore what they now call decline rate. You see, if you look at how these claims are carried on the provider end, they're carried as we have offered a service, this amount is owed. But if you look at how it sits for me as an insurer, I'm looking at it and I want to make sure that it meets my policy conditions and that it meets the clinical guidelines. And those have two very different sets of lenses. So for me, I will decline a component, and that decline rate is a service that has already been offered and a cost that has already been expended, and I'm saying that I will not be able to pay for that. So any increases in decline rate will, of course, cause some friction. It took us some time because that's change management on the provider end, and for them to realize and recognize the value of it, and that has been quite some work. But I think we have made some really strong strides in that area. The fourth thing for me would, of course, being able to demonstrate value beyond claims decline. Again, I keep going back to the fact that we are known for wanting to decline. This is an emotive issue. So how do you make sure that it is more than just the fact that we have declined this or this or that? So for the various stakeholders, whether it's to our consumers, demonstrating that the fact that I'm leveraging on this technology, you're seeing this efficiency, but it's coming back to you as a cheaper product, or you have a lower renewal premium, going back to the providers and being able to demonstrate to them that, look, yes, I'm declining this, but I'm able to give you the data where I can help you to have lower rejection rate and therefore more predictability in your earnings. But also I can pay you in 30 days, which then means you have consistency in cash flows to demonstrate to the regulators that we are not absolving ourselves from responsibility. It is AI, but it's AI and the human as well, that we retain full responsibility, right? For the fact that whatever it's adjudicating, that it remains well within the confines of what regulation expects of us. It is making sure that we are meeting our treating customer fairly requirements on this end and continue to remain accountable for them to see that. And something Benjamin had spoken to, demonstrating that it's ethical. Because remember, we're training these models. They're trained on data, that we are addressing the biases continuously to make sure that they are actually fair. And all we are doing is accelerating the decisions, but accelerating fair decisions that remain fair. And as has been spoken to before, auditable, that they can stand to being audited and we can say this was the right decision, just made faster and has value across the ecosystem.
Okay, thank you for that. A lot of nuances there. The biggest one for me is value, demonstrating value for every party that is involved. It's really key. Yeah, so you mentioned Benjamin. So Benjamin, coming to you, given that you are now in the space of regulation, fraud enforcement, and also data privacy, I'd just like to know, are regulatory frameworks for health insurance fraud keeping up or creating more friction than protection?
Well, yes, I think you could say yes and no. The regulator has been very passionate about treating customers fairly. And of course, I resonate with that. Of course, what Njeri said, we are not in the business of declining claims. And we should be there when the client needs us. The fact that the regulator is pushing for faster turnaround times in terms of claim settlement. And if I could speak for Uganda, I think Uganda are more aggressive on that, the regulator in Uganda, in terms of turnaround times in settling claims, medical claims. Now, of course, with that comes a challenge because for us to satisfy ourselves that these claims are payable or not payable, sometimes it takes time. Well, with the appropriate tools, it could take shorter time, but you want to have 100% confidence that the claims you're paying are payable and the claims you're declining are actually not payable. So balancing between regulatory requirements on faster turnaround times on claim settlement, and of course reducing the bar in terms of declining claims, not just frivolously declining claims, puts pressure on insurers in terms of vetting for fraud. But at the same time, of course, there's a lot of opportunity that the regulator has given to insurers. If I may speak for Kenya, for example, the sandbox initiative by the regulator gives insurers some leeway of experimenting some of these technologies to make sure that there's that balance between innovation and regulation. So, and that's why I said my answer would be a yes and a no.
Yeah. So yeah, a yes and a no basically saying you need a balance on both. So that's a good way. That's a good answer to that. Dennis, so to you, I know you on your day-to-day claims operation, you also deal with a lot of provider disputes and many other challenges the same. So just maybe coming up from where we left with Benjamin, I'd like to know how do you manage relationship with healthcare providers when there's a dispute over a claim, especially when fraud and abuse is suspected?
Thanks, Marvin. By and large, I think is one to always first take a couple of steps back. like Jerry was talking about, you need to demonstrate. But during the process of demonstration, you need to understand what the impact is. Because we have the data, we see the averages, and most of the time we use the insurance lens. So if we approach providers just from an insurance perspective, there's going to be a huge clash because they don't want to look at things the same way that we look at them. So we did definitely have a bit of pushback in the beginning, right? But then we needed to take a couple of steps back and say, okay, what are we missing? We have the data, we have the stats. So it was quick for us then to say, well, we look at when we're dealing with our customers, we have all these particular metrics, incidence rate, X, Y, Z, right? But none of that conversation has ever been held with the providers to begin with. Like, what are repeat visits? All those particular matrices that we look into. Or maybe just to mention, before AI, we largely relied on our actuaries to give us the insights. But we only use that pretty much on policy administration. We didn't apply that so much on our claims adjudication. So to make sure that there's a fair balance is one, provider education becomes very critical. This is what the data is telling us. So opposed to saying, oh, you see you're overbilling, there's a bit of, the defensive mechanism, but you take the approaches, oh, this is the industrial averages, right? This is what we expect across the board from the data that we're seeing. So we even get to a level where we say, oh, this is what your counterparts are performing. So it's no longer moves away from an isolated incident that we're dealing with a provider at that level, but we're sharing insights in terms of averages. That when you look at the outpatient incidences, this is what we expect. But when we look at what your data is telling us, this is the matrix that is coming up. For example, hospitals, one of the key KPI we do track is the average length of stay, right? Or even a conversion rate from outpatient into inpatient. So AI is helping us see and track those parameters really early, right? Because now the data is coming in really early, opposed to 10 years ago, you get to see this data when an actuary gets to look at it for 3 months and tells you this is where we are. Now, the early feedback to the customer and explaining the implication of the data, but then also we try to relate that to the sustainability of the ecosystem that we've created. For example, we tell providers, oh, you see, when the incidence rates are high, it means the claims ratio for a particular customer is going to be high. My ability to retain that customer to be able to continue to give you that business becomes, quite close to none. So if I cannot attract that business because the nature of the claims that are coming through does not sustain the system, then they start to see the sense in it that work with me as a partner while I'm giving you these insights to adjust the quality of the claims. It makes it then sustainable. Then what Njeri also spoke about, now that we have AI, we're able to adjudicate claims much faster because when you look at the volumes that are coming through, the TAT becomes much shorter, right? Someone earlier spoke about the quality of the data that is coming through. When you're posting the claims, are you posting them in the right benefits, for example? You could find a clearly admissible claim, but it was billed where a maternity benefit is being billed under optical or dental. Based on our rules, that would be an automatic rejection. Educate the provider, make them see the bigger picture. So opposed to fighting them, educate them, connect the dots, how it affects the entire ecosystem, then the relationship becomes much better. So we've been able to make such headway that right now, once the results are out, we do send them the remittance, where the challenges are, then you see improvement in the next submission. So it's a fair balance of understanding their point of view and connecting the dots for them to understand. Back to you.
Yeah, I hear you. So basically, you're saying it's more of a collaboration, which is a clear path for both parties. Yeah, so I'm looking at the audience. I can see several questions coming in. I can see Dr. Jen has a question. We have James Dogu, we have Ageke, we have Charles Opio, we have Helen Osore, we have Barak Litwas. Please keep the questions coming in. So I'll go to you, Jabbar, for my last question for the panel. And this is basically for you, given that you have a perspective of the whole continent in terms of your conversations and also how you've traveled. So we'd like to know from the conversations you're having with insurers across the continent, what is the single biggest shift in our health insurer thinking about fraud compared to even 2 or 3 years ago? So what is the major shift that you think has happened?
Well, I mean, for the early adopters, I would say it's again, with maturity comes your ability to leverage intelligence, right? So it first starts from getting the operational bit right, clearly showing cost savings to your stakeholders, your shareholders, and then also driving that change management, like our execs have said, across the value chain, right? Again, you have to work closely with your providers and the entire ecosystem. And now I think the new trends we're now seeing is for our earliest adopters, they're now moving to be, relying on that intelligence to be more predictive, right? How do you move from, being preventive to being more proactive, right? For some insurers like Discovery in South Africa, they've already moved really advanced, in telematics and, data on their beneficiaries. And that combined with historical claim patterns, usage, they're able to also design programs, products, and even just engagements that really, hit the nail for the consumers. It's not just about paying hospital bills, right? How do we also tap into preventive care? How do we encourage healthy lifestyle? So all this intelligence, from seeing fraud patterns, being able to, detect pandemics before they become something out of hand, also managing your provider engagement, understanding your user patterns, and then layering, their lifestyle habits on that and health records, gives you the additional advantage to then offer something more tailored and more useful to them before they even start being ill or having the need to see a doctor, right? Encouraging healthy lifestyle and just a lot more preventive care. So I think that's where intelligence, especially in East Africa, is moving, in terms of the direction. My execs can also, chip in a bit here. But for our earliest adopters, that is something I'm really seeing them move towards. And it's really encouraging to see how much more opportunities, AI and just driving business intelligence, can unlock in the East African market. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that, Jabba. Really appreciate it. So I like to jump. I'm seeing the chats are really on fire. So many questions are coming in, and with our audience having so many questions, I wouldn't want a situation of where they feel like maybe they didn't participate in these. And I'm seeing also we're running out of time. So what I like to do is just go to our chat, look at the questions that are there, and then just give it to our panel. Anybody in the panel again can go. You can also chime in if you feel you have something else, if somebody else has gone. So I'll start with the first question from Dr. Jane Nyapara, sorry. She's saying, good morning, everyone. Such a good panel discussion. Thank you, Dr. Jane. It's really coming in at a right time where our clients are demanding for value in their treatment pathways. And this is something also Njeri had mentioned about value. I'd be curious to get views from the panel on how we use AI to achieve this. So how do we achieve using AI the value for treatment for pathways for basically the clients? So that is the question. So I'll just repeat the question. It's really coming at the right time where our clients are demanding for value in their treatment pathways. I'd be curious to get views from the panel on how we use AI to achieve this. So anyone in the panel can go.
Okay, I can do it, and then the other person can come in. If you look at the insurer today and all the data we hold, you want to think about the fact that today we look at a client with their diagnosis across multiple providers, multiple seasons, and so on. And this is a lot of great data. And I think Jabbar had spoken to the fact that when you now look at all of this data and can be able to it gives you trends. And the question is, what do these trends enable you to do? Part of that, and I was speaking it to it earlier, I can already point to you, for me, providers who already overutilize antibiotics, and there are conversations around that in terms of, what are we doing? And of course, as I said, post-COVID, a lot of providers have gone into a concept I like to call upsell on diagnostics, upsell on pharmacy, and I dare say, in some instances, the billing is as slight as if you go down to the number of pills given. If you give them to a normal adult, they probably wouldn't be alive. That kind of detail. I think value here is, as I spoke to, helping the client have both quality outcomes and sustaining affordability. And that's why we're talking about value-based care. Can I keep my client well? And how do I support them in that wellness journey? And increasingly today, the conversation for the insurer has to shift from just being what we call pairs to really going on the other end of the spectrum. And I've seen a couple of questions in the chat on preventive care. Today for us, because this is something that we use today, a lot of our providers have conversations with us on outcomes. We discuss outcomes. If a client was in hospital this week and next week you're treating for something else, or they've come in a week later and you're doing 1 million tests, we have a question on what are you really looking for? And we have a trend here that speaks to how that can be managed. The other use case for us has been on health navigation. Today, we are able to pick out clients who are more susceptible to end up with a certain kind of lifestyle disease downstream and begin to work towards managing them earlier. Those who are already unwell and have a lifestyle disease, today we are managing them through our health navigation system in terms of making sure that they remain on the better spectrum of wellness. So value for me will be, how do you support the client remain healthy? If they're already well in their 20s, 30s, how do you support them in that? And we've begun to pilot with, if you are exercising, if you're putting in effort and you're already putting in certain initiatives that keep you on the healthy end, how does that end up in your premium? But also on this other end, if you are already having some sort of ailment, how do we support you using the fact that we already have your records for an extended period of time? How do we reduce your likelihood of admission or hospitalization? How do we support you in managing the downstream likely cost if all we are doing is just paying your bills? So that for me is what I'd consider is value and how AI is supporting that. But again, back to the one I call the simplest example. The basic reference to ICD-10, ICD-11 to determine whether you're getting the right quality of care is perhaps the biggest win we have from this. I'm not sure that our friends on the medical training end, like Dr. Jane, who has this question, like the fact that today we know what our treatment should be. Today, I know how many tablets I can reasonably consume. Even if I did not sit down with you, I have an indication. I'm not sure, and I think it's an exciting time for our industry, and I think, human beings in general. Today, I can have a conversation. I'm not sure ChatGPT is helping because we're all going to check I'm feeling unwell and then go and challenge them. But we actually have a scientific way that can help us support quality of care. I think that is a huge win that we have from AI.
Yeah, interesting. So many nuances coming in from there. There's a lot to take from there. The last part of where we can also know what the doctors are telling us and also maybe dispute some extent. I support that 100%. Since somebody has joined the chat and they have their hand up, David, do you have a question? Do you have a comment?
Yes, good morning. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, David. Go ahead.
Perfect. David Godson, I'm calling in from PwC, New York. Great panel. Thank you all for joining and adding your insights. I'm a senior consultant in the insurance space, specifically focusing on AI adoption for our AI clients, for insurance clients rather. So I wanted to ask, and this is directed to anyone, but where have you seen the most impact for using AI, whether it's machine learning, agentic AI, for example? It sounds like, based on the discussion we've had, it's mostly centered around claims. So I wanted to confirm that. And then if that is the case, why is it particularly claims rather than operations or other aspects of the business?
Maybe I can answer that. Thanks, David, for that question. You may have noticed that the conversation is more centered on claims, and it could be because that's where there's a bigger pain point. As you heard, the fraud rate is very high, and where fraud happens is in claims. However, that does not mean that the only use cases in machine learning use cases are in claims. There's a lot of utilization of machine learning in other areas as well, especially on underwriting. If you're talking about medical underwriting, that is you want to underwrite based on the risk profile of your insured. There's an opportunity to use AI there as well. So the bias towards claim is simply informed by the fact that that's where there's a bigger pain point, but the other use cases as well.
And allow me to just chime in as well. Thank you for that. If you look at our market generally, and let me come zeroing down more specifically to Kenya, our social health insurance is not perhaps at the level that we'd want it to be. So that social layer is not as strong. And that introduces an additional moral hazard layer and incentive for claims fraud. So fraud, waste, and abuse is significant for us. What we haven't spoken to is there are a couple of use cases in this market. For example, for us at Jubilee, we've begun to pilot agentic AI for pre-auth, and that will go in. There's a strong use case to use it for underwriting because, of course, that is where you want to begin from profiling, targeting, and so on, and make sure that from the onset you have some semblance of it. But as has been said, the biggest issue, and if you look at our data, this industry, by and large, medical insurance is a huge loss driver, fastest growing class of insurance, but significantly loss making. So the biggest issue has been to address the immediate pain point, which ties into the fact that it's been the easiest use case or what you call a business case for boards. It's been straightforward in that we have this pain point, we can do it, and then once the case for AI is made, then it then becomes easier to expand to the rest of the conversation.
I hope that answers you, David.
Yes,
Do you have a
excellent.
follow-up question?
Are there any metrics any of you can share, whether it's efficiency gains or cost reduction, or perhaps even on the premium on the underwriting side? I think, Benjamin, you mentioned that was also a potential use case where you're seeing some hard and set metrics of the value add.
Well, I may not have had numbers to that, but what I can say is that there are actually a lot of use cases in that area, especially if you're looking at micro insurance. And micro insurance is a big market. Now you cannot do individual underwriting for all the micro insurance clients, and so if you're looking at if you're able to size that micro insurance market, that's a big opportunity for using AI for example, mean testing, checking what would be the premium you want to charge these people. So in as much as an industry may not have hard numbers, there's quite a lot of statistics that you can use to determine that.
If I could probably come in and support on Benjamin's submission, it's okay. We have some stats in terms of what we have been able to deploy so far. And you can measure it, one, in terms of TAT, in terms of when you receive the claim and when you're able to adjudicate it to process into payment. Before, it was largely manual, right? So now you can see the TAT, tens of thousands of claims, which would have been done in over 20 days, are done in under a day or a couple of hours, 4 hours. So there's a huge win when it comes to processing TAT. Now where you have over 80% of our claims are going through AI. So that one, from a business perspective, it reduces on your expenses in terms of human resources. So you're automating more in terms of processing. So there's a huge shift in terms of TAT and then on cost of adjudication of the claims. But then also, secondly, when you look at adjustment, because when you look at claims, from what has been received and what has been adjusted. Adjustment means rejections, price adjustments, copay, and all of that for those particular aspects. So with AI, where someone was doing it manually, AI is able to pick all of that up. Now you're saying that when we did start, the rejection rate in terms of the quality of the claims was as high as 18% to 20%, which then created a lot of friction. But of course, we said AI is constantly learning. We're having conversations with providers. Now you're seeing that adjustment rate constantly dropping down. But now when you start to measure it against the claim that's coming through in terms of incurred claims, you see the incurred claims are reducing because the quality of the claims that are coming through drastically dropping by at least an 8%, right? So meaning providers are getting more aligned with what we expect in terms of claims. So meaning you don't having a lot of unnecessary claims being posted. But then also in terms of the feedback that we give back and say what Njeri was talking about, polypharmacy, polylab, right? It is streamlining the quality of care. So you're seeing someone, either it could have been misbilling, or maybe it was a junior doctor that actually did prescribe. So that feedback is helping improve the healthcare outcomes. So you have very many measurable points based on the KPIs that you are looking at. So when you do structure it as an insurer, you're able to look at what kind of TAT am I looking at in terms of adjudication process? How much am I looking in terms of saving, in terms of man hours? The rejection, and also something to do with rejections. There's a whole long process that we have called reconciliation with service providers. AI is making that conversation become much easier. It's one of the longest process when it comes to claims management. So with AI, because you have all the stats, so when you go back into that process, which used to take about 6 months to 3 months, right now you can do a reconciliation within a month's time. So there are a couple of wins with everything that we've been able to deploy. You're able to measure it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Dennis. I'm seeing we're running out of time. We have very many questions that have come in from our audience. We can't go through them all. I'm sorry. But what we'll do is that we will take these questions, share with our panelists, and then we'll also get answers from them, and we'll share this with you. But maybe for the last question here, let me just check. So there is Chris Opio. Maybe from the panelists, just give us a straight answer on this because we are out of time right now. So Chris Opio is asking, what are the foreseeable risks related to using AI, customer data privacy and regulation related using AI to improve health insurance service to customers?
Maybe I'll give very short answer. I think it's given part of the answer, data privacy, because some of this processing might be done in jurisdictions that may not have privacy laws equivalent to host countries. Then, of course, there is what I talked about earlier, this bias in the decisions made and explainability of the decisions being made. So those are risks that we must evaluate as before we go into using AI in this. And especially given that medical data that we're talking about is sensitive personal data. So we must be very alive to the risks associated with that.
Okay. Thank you so much for your answer. I think with that, we need to wrap up our webinar today. Thank you everyone for making time for this. We had a large crowd today and we have really many questions. Like I promised, we'll share this question with our panel and we'll get answers from them and also we'll share with you. We will be having our next webinar soon. We'll be able to announce that to you, but really my appreciation is to our panelist, Dr. Benjamin Otieno. Again, thank you so much for making time for this. I really appreciate you. I know you have a busy schedule, but having you here is really educative and insightful in terms of just getting to understand what is happening in the insurance industry. Dennis, I also want to thank you so much for making time for us. Like I mentioned earlier, you're part of the operations, you know anything to do with claims and how to adjudicate and all that. And it's not an easy job. So we really appreciate you for making time for us today. We really appreciate you. I can see Dr. Njeri already left, but really appreciate her. Sorry, Njeri left. We really appreciate her for making time for this. I know each one of you has a tight schedule. Yes.
Sorry.
You're still here. Okay.
The network has decided I will not speak about AI today, but thank you for having me.
No problem. We really appreciate you for making time for this. It's really been fun. I think we'll have another one because I feel like maybe we should do 2 hours or something, but I don't know. We'll discuss with everybody and see because it's been really a good one. Jabba, our VP of Commercials, thank you for making this happen. I know you're the one behind the scenes organizing for everything. So we really appreciate you. And thank you everyone for making this happen by attending, by asking questions like I promised. Those questions will be answered. We'll share the panelists and then share it back with you. David, also, thank you for bracing us with your questions. Really appreciate everyone for making this happen. Have a great day ahead of you. Bye.
Thank you.
For your time.
See you in the next one, everyone.